shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Behave yourselves!
Hello, YouTubers out there. This is Jerry Saravia at the movies. So last night I went to see Raiders of the Lost Ark, which would be my fourth time seeing it in a theater since 1981. The original 1981 screening, I saw it, I think the first week that it came out in June. And then I saw it, the re-release a year later with the CYO Day Camp. So I was young back then, 10, 11 years old. And then I saw it again in the theater in 2011. This was to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Raiders. And that one was a bit of a mixed, experience, because they were showing a version of the film that wasn't... There were a couple things that didn't look quite right. One of them, it was just minor, but one of them being the character of Satipo, played by Alfred Molina in the cave, where his face somehow becomes warped. It wasn't clear what the hell happened, but it kind of thins out. It didn't look right. Like when I saw it, I said, what the hell is this? So, but anyway, then I heard that the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, because I live near Baltimore, was going to do a screening of Raiders. They were going to perform the music as the film plays. And the way this works is they play the film, then there's a 20-minute intermission, and then we're back again to see the rest of the picture, which actually is not a bad way to do it, because with an orchestra, to keep up with especially the pace of a movie like Raiders can't be that easy, particularly with all the music cues and everything else. So it was a very good experience. It was quite thrilling. It was a sold-out show, so every seat was occupied. Every seat. It was a big theater, and there were also seats in the balconies, of which there were at least 2 different balconies. And because the orchestra does a lot of classical music and other stuff as well. So, but I think what happened was there were some buses that had been chartered to the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, about 5 or 6 buses, because when I heard it was sold out, I didn't know why. I said, oh, okay, well, that's good, I guess. There's an interest. That's always amazing. And we're getting close to the 45th anniversary as well of Raiders, although it's not clear to me if this is the year they're going to celebrate the 45th anniversary or next year. Sometimes they do that. They choose the year before. I don't know the reasons behind that, but nevertheless. So there were a lot of young people there. And then there were also older people, and there were a few older people who even wore an Indiana Jones hat, that fedora, or I think just a couple did the get-up. There was one young woman I saw who was wearing the leather jacket and the hat, and I thought, oh, that's very interesting. And of course, the pouch was not on the left-hand side, but the right-hand side. So maybe she's a fan of Dial Destiny, or she didn't think about it, because that's the only one in the series where Indiana Jones wears the pouch on the right-hand side, except for Raiders, of course, because when he gets on the horse and chases the truck, it's on the right side as opposed to the left. Not that it matters. I mean, who the hell cares? But whatever. So the pouch, covering the holster doesn't make it easy. But since he doesn't have a gun anymore in Dial Destiny, then there you go. So anyway, the screening started, and the interesting thing is that the conductor was also a huge fan of the film and said this is the greatest action-adventure movie of all time, which, I still think that. I haven't changed my mind. By the way, the 4 times I've seen it in the theaters doesn't equal nearly as many times that I've seen it on home video and DVD and Blu-ray. I mean, I've seen it multiple times throughout my whole life, this movie. So it really became a part of my life. I've explained that in a separate video. The orchestra was excellent. The music was terrific. I mean, and they also, what I found fascinating, I didn't look this up, so I don't know, maybe some of you who are even more diehard fans than I am, there were certain nuances that it seems to me that they put in there, and certain other bits, little sound bits from the soundtrack, from the music, that weren't there, particularly during the opening of the film. Or it wasn't the music, but I don't know what it was, but it was just like when they first enter the temple, there are quite a few different sounds. And many of those sounds are musical cues. And some of them seem to be missing. I noticed that. So the music was thunderous, particularly during the opening when he, gets the idol, or when he finally catches up with Jock in the water and the Jovito Indians are firing their arrows at him. Terrific stuff. And they all applauded actually after that opening sequence because it was clear that the music, they did an excellent job overall. But they did add nuances, it seems to me. When I heard the extended soundtrack years ago, this is more than 20 years ago now at this point, I didn't catch some of the nuances, because I know the music very well at this point. I didn't catch some of the nuances they put in here when the orchestra performed. So it seems to me they added things that maybe weren't there, or they made up for things they couldn't quite replicate. I don't know what it was. It's rather odd. But if the extended soundtrack had been pressed on vinyl, please let me know, because I didn't actually look it up, so I leave it to you to discover. I may look it up later if I remember, but maybe there are, because in vinyl you always find nuances that weren't present on a CD or recording usually. So or even back in the day a cassette tape. But here's the thing. What I noticed was that the music quite often overwhelmed the soundtrack of the film itself when they are just talking, or the sound effects present in the film. And that was strange. So sometimes the punches, when you hear the punches, which are extraordinarily over the top, of course, because they're meant to be, you couldn't hear them. What you were hearing was the music that correlates with that. So instead of a punch, we hear the sound of a drum or something else that they use to, it's amplified, and it takes away from some of that sound. When he first cracks that whip at the beginning of the picture, I didn't really hear it the way I remembered it. You know what I mean? Or even when you watch it on Blu-ray, it wasn't quite there. Particularly the spike chamber when he raises his hand and, don't get near the light. That sound was very specific. It kind of the movie is an adventure in sound. Never mind just the music, the sound itself of the film. It's definitely an adventure in itself. It's really quite dramatic, and some of it kind of gives you goose pimples. And I didn't feel it in this movie, other than the blowing of the dart from the statue's mouth, and it hits that stick that Indiana Jones is holding. That was present. So there were things that were there, but the truck chase when it first starts and he's riding the horse. Again, you barely hear the sound of all the people who are chasing him as he's riding off a horse he just stole, to get to the Ark, which is in the truck, that whole truck chase. So some of that wasn't there, but then when he gets shot and he's thrown to the great glass window, that was all there, and it was very significant, particularly the pulling of the iron in front of the truck. So then the other thing was the gun battle at the bar in Nepal, Marion's bar. And that it wasn't quite there. That sound wasn't quite there. It didn't make you want to, stand back and, it wasn't there. They did a beautiful job, but it seems to obscure some of the sound effects in the picture. When there's just dialogue, there isn't really a whole lot of music. Mainly because that's how the film plays. In some cases there is, in some cases there isn't. When he's inside the Well of the Souls and gets the Ark and lifts it up, I mean, it was all there. It was really, really something to see. Or Tote, he has like a pair of chains and you think he's going to strangle or do something to Marion, and it turns out to be a coat hanger. That music played beautifully. It was insane. It was so good. And those were examples of where it was really great and where the sound really was transformative. Now, in terms of audience, Raiders has always been an audience movie. I mean, it is an audience picture, but I would even, arguably say all the Indiana Jones pictures are. But the young people were not so responsive to the film. It seemed to me. Sometimes I would look around and it wasn't quite there. Others maybe were a little too shocked to see Indiana Jones shooting the Arab swordsman, something that George Lucas never apparently liked, from what I read way in the way back. It's hard to say if they just found that to be racist. I don't know. It's weird. In other cases, there was a lot of laughs. There was a lot of people hootering and hollering. But in some cases, not so much. And, I always compare it back to my 1981 screening. When I first saw the movie, it was new back then, of course. It's 40 years ago. I mean, look, I'm old, so. But I remember when Raiders first came out, that audience, I'll never forget, they were wowed by the movie. They truly were. And here, it was just so muted, other than the older people who knew the picture already, I would assume, and had definitely seen it. But they didn't, it wasn't quite the same. It feels like there's a little disconnect. And maybe because there have been so many types of movies like Raiders, cliffhanger type movies, or adventure movies of different sorts, whether it's Jungle Cruise or Tomb Raider or whatever, that when you see the original model, which of course is an offshoot of the pictures that it was paying homage to, the serials of the past, maybe it just falls short for some people. Maybe it's not quite there. This young kid that was watching it couldn't have been more than, I don't know, maybe say 9, 10 years old. He was getting a little restless watching the movie. So I thought, man, it's just things have changed. But it doesn't change how great the movie is. So it's worth seeing with an orchestra if you ever do. But remember, keep in mind, some of the sound may be obscured by the actual original musical score. And that can be a hindrance for some people who know what to anticipate, as I do, and you're just not really hearing it, so we'll see. Hopefully, I'm hoping one of these days they're going to re-release Raiders and show it in IMAX, because I missed my chance in 2023, because they did re-release it briefly for a couple of days. So let's hope they do. There is a 45th anniversary coming, whether it's this year or next, I don't know yet, we'll see. So, yeah, but those are my thoughts on Raiders of the Lost Ark with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. Great orchestra. I'm sure there are other great ones around the country that occasionally do this sort of thing. And, yeah, that's what I got to say about that. So, let me know your thoughts. Tell me if you've attended any movies at all. It doesn't have to be Raiders, where a symphony orchestra accompaniment was present. So, tell me what you think, and I guess that's all I got to say about that. And thank you to the new subscribers I've acquired in the last couple days. Got a couple more. And if you are new to this channel, keep in mind I do review movies and review all sorts of movie-related topics on occasion. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you. Please hit like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell for future uploads. And that's all I got to say for the time being for Raiders of the Lost Ark. It seems every once in a while I'm talking about this movie. I can't help it. Oh well, there's so many movies, so All right. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.